welcome to Policy and Politics with me, Tarun Nangia. Today, we're going to decode this year's budget with you, which Nirmala Sitharaman read out this morning. Very interestingly, a lot of big announcements were made, but we'll try to get in a bit of analysis on each sector and also overall, what does this mean? Of course, this is a prelude to our three-part series, Decoding the Entire Budget, which you will see coming week. But let me welcome at the outset, Saket Dalmia is a president of PhD Chambers of Commerce and somebody who's very vocal on issues related to the economy. I have with me Vipin Vora. He is chair of the Civil Aviation Committee at PhD Chamber. Good to see you. I have with me Pallavi Dinodia. She's co-chair of the Direct Tax Committee of the PhD Chambers of Commerce. Good to see you, ma'am. At the outset, let me request Saket Dalmia, President, PhD Chambers of Commerce, for his opening comments. Sir, could you, in the first 3 minutes, lay the ground of what all happened today, and then we move ahead. Over to you.
Thank you, Tarun. So to get right to the point, I think it's a fantastic budget. There's a huge feel good and there is an actual need there. There were two big asks from our side as a chamber, and I think in general it's true for everybody. One, that the government comes out and spends into the economy because they are the fundamental drivers still. Coming out of COVID and looking at us as a developing economy and looking at Southeast Asia, how they develop, we need to spend more into the economy through the hands of the government. If they want the dreams of the Gati Shakti and so on and so forth to come true, they need to spend. They did that. 33% increase is a decent increase, 3.5% of GDP. Second big ask was give more in the hands of the consumers so that they can spend into the economy. So both, I should say, expenditure or consumption-driven demand is the key. Having the largest middle class in the world today. And the good news in the direct taxes, also in personal income tax, I personally feel, and everybody in the chamber also felt, was that they did enough to give, first of all, the indication that, look, we want to increase the base of exemption. We understand that, cost of living has gone up, inflation has gone up. The big thing also was that at the peak, they are accepting that there's a class of people who have earned money. They want to pay tax them a little bit less. The middle class hugely benefited. So in one way, they are trying to simplify by making a shift to the new regime of tax. And at the same time, giving you relief at the important points and signaling that, that we are there to help you in whatever way we can. Spending 40,000 crore rupees out of pocket by foregoing tax is a good amount. Having said that, the other important aspects, I think the MSME funding, realizing that the ECLGS worked a lot in helping MSMEs, giving a boost to survival and growth. Giving 2 lakh crore rupees corpus is a great idea. I think that's something which was needed. Reviving, keeping startup concept alive, accepting the fact that it takes time for them to make money and pushing from 7 to 10 years, the period in which they can take exemptions. Agricultural spend, accepting storage as a big pain point, trying to work there, pushing biogas and biomass-based gas because, all the urli burning and all, this is that base which will now go into biomass. So, two birds killed with one stone. That will be used as raw material, become a substitute for gas. So good thinking there. Education, again, focusing more on skilling. I think, when we talk about employment, I think we all need employees, you, me, all of us. The problem is skilled employees. So government accepting that skilling, reskilling is a critical aspect and trying to focus there and shifting the focus there is key. They've done a good job. And most importantly, for the future generations, I think the green energy part, that really putting their money where the mouth is and saying that apart from that green hydrogen initiative of 20,000 crores, which they have already announced, laying a full pathway towards all the other ways in which we can be green, funding it, giving benefits and helping you as an enterprise shift or transition into green energy. So these are, broad-based, I think, inclusive, fine-printed action plan which the government has done. And I think that has come because I don't think so in the history of modern India, the government has ever interacted so much with industry. So I think this is an output of that.
Thanks for that. I also want to know from you, there was this thing on the cooperatives manufacturing tax at 15% up to next year. And secondly, startups are allowed to carry forward their losses for 7 years now in case of change of shareholders. And the incorporation of startups, that date also has now gone to March 24. You think some good steps by the government here?
Very good steps. I think this is the most they could have done in terms of startups, and then for cooperatives as well. I think it's a great idea because cooperatives is there to exist in India. So to focus on it, give it better focus in terms of taxation was required.
Okay, thanks for your opening comment. Now I'll take this to Mr. Vipin Bohra because he is chairing the Aviation Committee at PhD. Any specific comments and then overall comments from you on the budget?
Basically, in the budget, she has put a lot of emphasis on the infrastructure, and where she has mentioned, that 50 new airports, and other airports are coming, plus there are a lot of other things like simplification of KYC and other things which are required on day-to-day clearances of shipments and for export and import. The other most important thing she has mentioned is that there is new change in the SEZ policies and all, which is still to be, read. What are the main policies? They are to be seen. But overall, if you see the industry, as an export, they are giving a lot of emphasis on the exports. Now that export, if you want to increase the exports out of the country, the infrastructure has to increase, whether it's airports, whether it's roads, railways, everything. And even on railways, and airports and other things, she has emphasized a lot on those things. But the way I see it as the way the export is going to increase in the next 2 to 3 years, the airports and other things have to increase their cargo capacity, which is not happening that fast. There were policies like airfield station, they have to increase those type of things so that the cargo clearance can be done near to the production centers. And airports should be used like a transit points. Although there's a policy, but it's not taking, very fast, startup. This is where a lot of emphasis needs to be done. And this should be made popularized, in India. The other main important thing is, railways. Now, a lot of cargo has started moving on railways, and the railways is also thinking of carrying small goods. Right now, they are more interested in carrying cement, steel, and all of the big things. But now they are coming into smaller things. They are they are increasing their loads by offering small packages. All those things. Like to the courier companies and to other companies, which will give at least a boom to the cargo industry. Now, other most important thing which she has mentioned is on the, on this, what is called, by sea, the cargo will start moving by ship, smaller ships from one port to another within India. Coastal shipping. Coastal shipping is going to play a major role in the coming years, and this will reduce a lot of cost in the cost-wise as compared to air freight and ocean freight or railways. So ocean freight is going to be the game changer. And a lot of emphasis, she has mentioned a lot of things on coastal shipping also in the budget. So that's very important.
Thanks for that opening comment. I'll go across to Pallavi Dimodia from the Direct Tax Committee. Of course, a whopping 122 amendments to the Income Tax Act. Of course, we will discuss that with you in detail in the coming week. But what are your opening comments on today's budget?
So, Tarun, I think my opening comment for the larger audience really is the pillar is tax certainty. If you remember the olden days or not so far back in our history, where every budget was a big bang budget, from a tax perspective, and something new happened every budget. And all FDI coming in, whether it's the startups, whether it was, money coming in terms of foreign direct investment, everybody wanted tax certainty, and I think that this government has been consistently been able to deliver tax certainty. So while there are, like you're saying, 122 amendments, most amendments are rationalization measures, simplification measures, or, measures that needed to be plugged, or loopholes, or maybe not loopholes, but, things that have to be consistently bettered. Right, which in this era of digitization and the gains of digitization, we are all seeing. When you file your tax returns today, your refunds come into your bank accounts in 3 days to 7 days. So the middle class is, of course, hugely benefited from the change in the slab rate from 5 lakhs to 7 lakhs and the rejig of the slabs, where at the highest slab of 15%, you have a substantial saving of 37,500. So it actually creates disposable income in the hands of the middle class, looking at the increase in, living costs, healthcare costs, etc., that Saket spoke about earlier. So I think on the tax side, two things. One, that it's a common man budget. It allows the common man to have certain liquidity, increase in disposable income in his hand. It also, shows that the government wants to move to the new tax regime, because all changes are in the new tax regime. So the old tax regime and the old ways of where you were always about deductions, is sort of paving the way where you pay tax on what you earn, and that tax is rationalized. I think that is the cornerstone for me for this budget.
Thanks for that comment. And I'll take a single line comment on Ma'am Nirmala Sitharaman, the Finance Minister of India. His wishes to him by the PhD President Saket Dalmia. I know he has other commitments, so I'll let him go after that. Your one line comment, and then of course you can continue for the rest of your engagements. I know you have a busy day.
So sorry, just if you can ask me again what you wanted to ask.
Basically, your single line complimenting the Finance Minister on the budget. What will be your message to her?
No, I think well done, I would say, and well heard. She heard everybody. I think the entire cabinet heard everybody, and she has touched upon important small details at every aspect of the common life of different industries, agriculture, education. So I think overall, comprehensively, very, very deeply thought and executed budget.
Allow me to take my question to the head of the Aviation Committee, Mr. Vipin. Your comment overall, what the aviation sector look like to you in the coming year? What push the government will need to make? Because, this is a very dynamic sector. So, anything on that?
See, basically, the main issue is that the airlines, they need to have the, oil prices and, aviation fuel, GSTs and all to be rationalized and reduced. Also, our, Civil Aviation Minister has done a lot of work. He's trying with all the state governments, and I think more than 8 or 9 states have already reduced the fuel, aviation fuel GST. So this is going to be one of the major things, because in the last 2 years, during COVID, the airlines have suffered a lot of losses. Now, they want to recover those losses, But on the other hand side, the way the things are going, the way the Prime Minister's Make in India policy, a lot of industries are coming into India, we have to make sure that the sufficient infrastructure is there to handle the exports. Now, just, in the speech, Ms. Sitharaman mentioned about the mobile phones. Now, mobile phones, have increased almost 1,000 times, more than that, from 18,000 crores to, she said, 33,000 crores. Now, look at the industries. If they are coming like this type of cargo by air, are we ready to handle that thing from India? Maybe after 2 years, the airports are not sufficient to handle this type of cargo. When even, other electronics and other industries, toy industry will come up. So government, announced the policy of airport station. Worldwide, it's very common, but in India, it's not getting popular because of the, airport terminal operators. They don't want to have this happen.
Very important point, and may I also welcome Alok Sriram. He is the former president, PhD, Chambers of Commerce. Good to see you again. And I think Mr. Sriram is somebody who actually is in the manufacturing sector. This is what the government wants, people to invest in greenfield capacity. He does that. So I think services we are doing all right. Manufacturing we need to grow. I think Mr. Sriram comes on that side. At the outset, can you give me in about a couple of lines your opening comments on the budget, and then we move on?
I think, Tarun, thank you for first. Thank you. I don't think we can find too much wrong with this budget, and I think that itself is a big thumbs up for the budget. The kind of infrastructure and public outlay is quite unimaginable. It's gone up 33% after 35% increase last year. So that's very good. I think it's a very clear directional budget. Investment will come, and a lot of investment really depends upon how the states handle it. But the fact that infrastructure is going to grow is very positive. I think one more major positive takeaway for me is what they are doing for the MSMEs. The 9,000 crore outlay for the insurance guarantee, which gives about 2 lakh crores to the MSME, and the fact that now taxation will be on cash receipts and not on accruals. I think these are very major supports to the MSME, and I would say after a long time, MSME's voice has been heard. So that's positive. The income tax benefits, of course, Pallavi is here, so she will be much more competent to answer that. But on the whole, they're moving towards a new tax regime very clearly. And I think it's a good signal, and it is giving good relief to the salaried middle class. So on the whole, I would say I'm happy with the budget.
So Alok Sriram says he's happy with the budget. We'll take one more comment from him on manufacturing. Very quickly before I go to Pallavi Dinodia. See, this government's focus largely now has been on pushing manufacturing because that is what will generate jobs for India. And of course, you see on startups, they give some rebates. Also, there were some announcements for the MSME sector. Do you think that should start going along now this year? Because this is what the country seriously wants: greenfield and new plants that generate jobs. Services, we are doing all right. We are doing very well in service sector. Manufacturing is what we need to focus.
There are two areas of manufacturing they are clearly focusing on. One is cooperatives and giving them a lot of support.
Yes.
The second is on green technologies and startups. And they have clearly focused on that. On the whole, once, as I said, when infrastructure capex will come and states will incentivize people to set up manufacturing should start setting up newer factories. But I think yet at this point, there is still a fair amount of slack in the capacity utilization in manufacturing.
Okay.
So by the time they finish setting up the infrastructure, I hope that by next year, the capacity utilizations increase and new capacities start coming up.
Yeah, very interesting point. The capacity utilization should increase for new plants to come up indeed. I'll go to Pallavi Dinodia from the Direct Tax Committee of PhD. Ma'am, in the first answer, you explained the highlights of the budget for direct taxes. One point that the finance minister also said was, why she was reducing the peak tax rate for, HNIs. In various interactions on a day-to-day basis, we hear from HNIs that why shouldn't they relocate, when they get facilities and lower taxes abroad in many countries. Do you think that problem has been addressed of our people who, earning money is not easy? This class of people who earn money, and there's a huge class of people who earn upwards of 1 crore in India. Do you think by reducing that tax, she has, in a sense, addressed their concerns that they've been voicing over the years now, over the past 4-5 years now?
Sure. So Tarun, I agree. I think that will go a long way. 39 to 42. Point something. So the 3% reduction in tax at, 1 crore plus income or a 5 crore plus income is a huge relief, and I think it should also be looked at coupled with the cost of living in India. So if you do relocate to any of these places that you're talking about, while the taxes may be lower, cost
Yes.
of living is much higher. Yes. So in the end, while you may save on taxes, you don't actually save anything because you end up spending on, daily needs much more. So our cost of living is much lower, and we have enough data to support that. So I think with the kind of cost of living we have and the reduction in the tax rates and also some other benefits, under the Income Tax Act in the previous years that we've seen that, you won't be determined as a permanent establishment, etc. And I'm going into the fine print of the previous years. But if, investment managers relocated to India, the investment fund is not taxed in India, etc. So I think overall the government is looking at investment and in the people earning, both at the lower end of the bracket and at the higher end of the bracket, and listening to all of them. Like Saket said earlier, it's important to listen, and I think the government clearly has the ear to the ground.
Thanks. We now will move on to a round of closing comments and messages for the Union Finance Minister. So I will go to Mr. Vipin Vohra. I want to ask you this. Last year, a huge demand came from the ground handling companies, and they are a huge employer in this aviation sector, that they wanted infrastructure status because they wanted access to loans. Do you think these teething problems will be addressed in the coming year? The budget has made a good start, but aviation is the sector of the future in India. Given how I mean, even now, how many people fly? It's a fraction of the population of this country. So there is a huge potential to be unbundled there. Your comments.
The airports, they want to have infrastructure, this industry, status. Similarly, like logistic companies, they have been saying this from the last 20 years that we want, industry status. Now there is, seaport people, they also want industry status. So all these logistic companies, they can't be singled out that only airports should get industry status. It is all the logistic chain should be looked at together. Whether it's, even the transport companies, they are looking for the industry status. So everybody has to, not only just the airports. So we have to see that. But yes, we definitely are looking for the logistics, complete logistic chain industry status, because they play a very important role now in handling the exports and service industry, So that's very important, that's a message which we would like to give, that they should look at giving industry status to the entire logistic chain, who handle the cargo.
Point well taken. I'll take this question and final comments on and message to the finance minister, to the former PhD president, Mr. Alok Sriram. I want to ask you this. If you see India's trajectory, the manufacturing sector over the years, post-liberalization, if they had seen a certain spurt. Then services took the leap and, we became a success in services. The past 10 years, saw the phenomenon of many companies getting registered in India, then shifting to Singapore for whatever reasons. Do you think those concerns need to be addressed so we don't lose our companies' registrations to other countries, mostly in the new emerging tech? These companies, you see, overnight they shift to UAE or Singapore and we lose. Though, of course, they continue to do business in India, but they continue to, their registration in the promoters also leave. Do you think that can be addressed in the coming years?
I think that must be addressed in the coming years. And for manufacturing and for startups, I'll answer that in two parts. As far as startups are concerned, they need a lot of flexibility and swiftness in actions. And sometimes, given our regulatory framework, that doesn't tend to happen. And I think that is one of the main reasons why youngsters tend to get a little frustrated and want to get away. As far as manufacturing is concerned, there is one area which is comparatively greenfield and which was not addressed in the budget speech, which is defense. I think a large outlay is there for defense, and the government has come up with great potential for new entrepreneurs to come into the defense manufacturing. First time they privatized it seriously. But there are, if I could call them, non-tariff barriers. The systems and processes in the defense forces are so cumbersome. Most of the tenders, for example, have this issue of past performance. Now, a new entrepreneur, therefore, just gets out of any chance of going into new tenders. And the same thing just keeps going on. So that can be very frustrating for people, for new entrepreneurs who put all their savings, etc., into these projects, and then find that after 2 years or 3 years or 5 years, they're not getting any headway in making business. So I think this is one area that the government must look at, these non-tariff barriers in the defense-related procurement.
Very, very important point, because there have been instances there where up to a decade after getting their registrations in place, companies have not been able to get orders in defense, and a very valid concern, I think, which must be addressed. Final comment from Pallavi Dinodia, Direct Tax Committee, PhD Chamber. This whole phenomenon of people shifting to Singapore and UAE after starting their businesses in India. Do you think this needs to change and changing in the coming year or so, with encouraging, in a sense, announcements by the Union Finance Minister today?
So, Tarun, I think it's twofold. It's not only to do with taxation, or I mean, that seems to be the consensus. But I would like to think that it's also because of the stricter IPR policies. Like you mentioned, that people in tech, right, they are moving their registrations also because the Copyright Act and the IPR sort of regime in those jurisdictions is much tighter. And therefore a foreigner who is looking at buying in, or FDI that's looking to buy into any of those tech enterprises, feels more comfortable given the security of the laws around what tech has built, right? So I don't think it's a pure tax question for moving of jurisdictions or moving of corporations to Singapore. I think it's also to do with the infrastructure around IPR. So slowly, as our IPR laws also develop and become more strong in India, I think that you will see that the tide will change.
I may appreciate all my panelists from joining me. Of course, Saket Dalmia joined in, and then he gave his comments. And of course, Pallavi Dinodia, Alok Sriram, and Vipin Mohra. Appreciate you joining us, sharing your views on this issue. Of course, we will request you to join us again in a couple of weeks for a detailed discussion on the budget, because I think very little less can be said immediately after the speech. All these things need a lot of reading and analysis. Like I said, 122 amendments to the Income Tax Act. That will take time reading to decode. That is what we'll also discuss later. But I appreciate you joining us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.